I'm Angelica Ramirez. I'm a bonsai student and the current apprentice at the U.S. National Bonsai and Penjing Museum, and you're listening to Bonsai Time Podcast.
With one more thing we like to do is that people we have on, we have listener, Ryan, what do you call it?
We're going to call it a bonsai brainstorm. And we do have some questions outside of the pictures that people submitted, but
Okay.
if you still have time, Angelica, is that okay?
Oh yeah, of course.
Okay.
I'll wake up tomorrow, I'll be like,
Like, damn those guys, like, damn.
Was out partying with bonsai all night,
Just tell Andy it was a podcast. He's like, oh, okay.
Don't feel bad about it though. This is the best, like anything to do with bonsai for me. I if I could get away with not sleeping to keep working on something bonsai related, I would. Yeah.
They do have things for that. No, okay.
The funny thing is the last time we did this segment was with Andy, which, yeah. So I guess it's an apprentice tradition now.
Okay. All right.
Contributing factors of being in that realm.
Oh, that's a lot of pressure. I don't know now. It's a lot of pressure.
No. Ryan, do you want to go with those questions that we have first, the bonsai brainstorm?
Yes. So I figured we could, we have 3 people who submitted questions. So I figured we could rotate and I'll pose the first one and we can all discuss, for example, for the first one, I'll share my ideas. And then if you guys have alternative ideas, you can share yours as well. And then I think, Kevin, I'll assign you the second one, and Angelica, you'll do the third one.
Okay.
So the first one is from Drew, who's in Columbus. Kevin, you and I have maybe met him. We know him.
Hey, Drew.
He asked a question for you and I specifically. And the first one for me is he asked, what makes Japanese black pine such an awesome species for bonsai, and what is some of the history behind that species in Japan? And I think that second part may be a good question for you, Kevin. But we all can discuss that. So I think one of the reasons that makes Japanese black pine an attractive species for bonsai is that it responds in a pretty predictable way to, say, the annual decandling. You get the back budding, you get the shorter needle production, and typically you can do that every year, and it will give you improved ramification from that as well. The Japanese have been using that species for so long that they found out that technique, and they found out that this is a species that can grow from seed very quickly and in the ground or in colanders to get good trunk size. So do you guys have any other ideas on why black pine is such a popular species?
I'd like to hear from Angelica's experiences working in Chicago and then all these trees. Now, coming from Florida, as you said,
yes,
you worked on a pine at Peter Chan's. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, so my experience with pines is very limited.
As of now.
yeah. So the first pine I ever worked on was with Peter, and then I worked on a few black pines, both in Chicago, and I worked on one the other day here in DC. So I don't. Again, when it comes to trees and work and things like that, I typically, I don't feel as qualified to speak on a lot of these things, especially since I don't have a lot of background in them. Not many years. First of all, not many years in bonsai. And second of all, most of my background is in tropicals. So, because most of the foundational learning I did was in tropicals. So when it comes to something like black pine, that for me, I can talk about what I like about it, my experience working on them. I think they're beautiful species, when you see them all developed and you work on it and you see that it's very nice. But personally, maybe it's been my experience, they are a little bit too pokey for me. So,
Truth.
Yeah.
You gotta wear the long sleeves.
Yeah. So I have to, my computer is running out of battery, so I
totally
messaged my husband to bring me to a charger. Yeah, so for black pine, I've only done a little bit of work on it. I've done a little bit of wiring. I've done a little bit of trimming. Learning about how you'll have like the little clumps depending on the type of pine.
Mhm.
Um, you have to, leaving two and, not, I'm losing my words. I must be getting tired. But, this is all new for me. So, seeing how they grow with the candles and decandling, all that, I have maybe two experiences with it max.
Hmm.
Well,
So
that's okay.
just being
You can
honest,
still
I
That's
very
provide
totally
like
fine.
honest.
styling advice
No,
or your perspective from learning about them.
Yeah. So, having that underhand grip so that I don't get stabbed every time I'm working on it,
yeah,
and then how far to decandle and also again it depends on the species too of the
right.
pine. And then,
Mhm.
going instead of if you have like 3 or 4 bundles, leaving only 2 in the desired direction you want. Those are the kind of things I've done with pine. But, when it comes to history of pine or just in general knowledge of pine, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Kevin, did you have any insight on the history of black pine in Japan? Because you've actually been to Japan. I've
Well, a
just
few
been
times
to the
now. Yeah,
US.
being my wife's from there.
Yeah.
Uh, it really depends on who you talk to. So I'm not going to go into that per se because it can get very convoluted. Just as like, where did the bonsai actually start? Was it Egypt, India, or China? We're not going to go into that. But in
Oh, I
regards
mean,
to
history of that species, the black pine species, the Japanese black pine.
right, everybody has a different take on it. I don't feel equipped to give you a direct answer, although saying that one answer I'll give, it is very dependent on where you're at locationally and how it's used. Southern Japan, you'll generally have possibly more field growing. Going north, you're going to have less resistance, or actually more resistance to climate environment with it. So northern Japan, like in Fukushima, you'll have more white pine because it can tolerate the colder winters. If you look at where Japanese black pine generally grows, it'd be more coastal, coastal Mediterranean microenvironments and things in that way. So you'll find it possibly more near the coastlines in southern Japan, east-western coastlines. Um, Being that the history, it's all dependent on what area you're in. So I can't really say a definitive answer of like this person did this person did that, because so many people have been working with black pines. I do know there's history in regarding of like technique, but that's also he said, she said, they said. So I can't really give a definitive answer on that. But as far as like what makes a black pine an awesome species for bonsai, in my opinion on it, is just the availability of it to be a almost finished material in a styling demonstration, or the ability to actually have something like, oh, this is what it can look like still in development while also looking more refined. I think it's an approachable piece because you have that ability. Similar to all conifers, deciduous will take time, obviously, but I think with Japanese black pine, you're more available because they do, as Ryan was saying, pinching, and as well as what Angelica was saying, pinching techniques and things help promote faster and better growth. Yeah, I think there's that one.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry,
Yeah,
long
that
drawn
was
out,
good.
but
I'm
We
over here
covered that one
kind
as best we
of
could.
fumbling through it, but
Mhm.
that's exactly good. Well
talking to enough college students now.
said.
So the second question, these are all from Drew, correct? Or
Yeah,
these?
yeah,
Okay.
the bullet point 2 there is for you.
Thank you, Drew, for all these. Are there different styles of bonsai dependent on where you are within Japan? For example, do northern regions of Japan have different styling or value of their tree species more so than the south or central Japan regions? Very good question, and very thoughtful question too, and I appreciate you asking this. Yes, to all the above. Depends on who you're studying with as well. Each artist has their own style. If you look at certain nurseries being dependent on if they're a formalized nursery taking on stock that's raw and turning it into something, or buying developmental stock that's almost refined, or buying refined stock and refining it more, you're going to have different styles, different approaches. Case in point, Fujikawa Koken, Bjorn's nursery where he studied has a selective style. I know Ryan Neal has stated that with Kimura, there's a selective style as far as how branch placement to almost like a shelving of each structure in creating an apex and things in that way. It's really dependent on what the teacher provides for you and what you take in from your teacher. The part about species dependent definitely is so. You can't necessarily grow things like in Okinawa like you could in Tokyo. Being that Okinawa would be considered the Hawaii of Japan, you have that Mediterranean climate year round. You don't have certain things for access to hibernation. Trees go dormant. You don't necessarily have the ease of access if you were in Tokyo or some mainland area. To answer more of a question, you should go visit Japan and take in as much as you can, specifically around winter time, because there's lots of shows. And in that way you can network more. And if you go to these shows, you'll probably one of the only few people who are from America in certain smaller prefectural settings, as prefectures are states, as we will call them, being from the US. Example, I was in Tochigi with my wife and my daughter, and I was the only white guy at this one show, and everyone came up to me, probably because my daughter's really cute. But just welcoming open arms. As earlier in the interview, Angelica had stated, the family is large and it's worldwide. Everyone I've met anywhere in Japan has been very opening, welcoming. Is like, please come see my nursery someday. I was like, okay, cool. I hope to get there. I hope that answered the question. Like I said, it's very just dependent on who you talk to and how you approach them with what you want to know. So ask questions and study Japanese.
I bet that will come in handy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
just real quick, one more
little
quick. If you do go to Japan, even knowing a tiny bit gets you respect, because you're trying to appreciate and show personality and personable culture identity to say that I'm giving my effort to try. It'll go farther than just being, hi, I only speak English, sorry, so take that for what you will.
Also helps typically to bring a little gift too.
Thank you. Yeah.
A lot of cultures around the world will, if you're meeting someone, if they've invited you, especially to their home, you bring them a little token of gratitude.
Japan is a highly gift culture. You go not expecting anything. You always give more than you get. So thank you for bringing that up.
Good to know. Okay, so those conclude Drew's questions, and now he has the tree that he submitted. So I'll read his caption here. He says, "This is a Japanese black pine that I have and love. It's got quite a few healthy lower branches and a thick base for being around 6 years old. It's currently in a larger pot to help speed up the growing process. As far as styling goes, it's angled coming out of the ground, providing some really cool options. Do you recommend letting this continue to grow larger, or using the top as sacrificial branches and turning it into a smaller shohin-style bonsai? Also, seeing as it's compact and somewhat crowded at the base, would you clear out some of the branches or leave them at this developmental stage?" And from his pictures, you can see that it does have a lot of branches in like the first. It's hard to judge the size from this picture, but maybe the lower third.
I think I'm going to share the screen real quick so our audience can watch it online if they want to watch real quick.
Well, yeah, I'll put the picture in the YouTube video version and in the show notes. So they'll have both options if they're on the podcast or the video.
No problem.
Yeah. But so you can see most of the branching is down low, and then there's kind of a gap, and then there's some branches higher up, and it's got a straight trunk that emerges from the pot maybe at a 60-degree angle. And we don't necessarily know from this picture like how thick that trunk is, but I'll run through probably what I would do with this tree, because I don't have many, like I do have some shohin style trees, but usually I'll do that for ones that already were interesting at that smaller size. And so for this one, if it was in my collection, I would probably raffia the trunk so that it will have a less likelihood of breaking. And then I would wire that trunk, wire it twice, and then I would try to give it some interesting bends. Because right now it seems like a mostly straight trunk from the picture, and it may turn into an interesting literati, or in the end, like some part of it could become a future sacrifice branch, as he mentioned. But yeah, if you guys had any other ideas, feel free to share those.
I would say for next time, if you're gonna, these are great pictures, by the way, it helps us really retain. Getting a bit of a closer look, maybe cutting the rim off the top to really see the full scale of the tree. This is just from
What
my
I-
experience, because I've done
Yeah.
that before and I was told this as well. So I'm passing on the information. For the
What was
picture
that?
itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So you could do one of many things. Your sacrificial branch idea could really work, and it could help thicken up the trunk really well. I know Jonas Dupuy, his website Bonsai Tonight, and his blog has a lot about that. I've learned a lot of my stuff, as well as Bonsai Mirai Live and other things. You could possibly make it into a nice shohin. You have some of that bottom branching down there, which you could do some candle pruning up top, leaving one to run, but also with certain candle pruning, you can let the energy go back down and run into the lower branching to help facilitate bigger growth. I believe Ryan's told me Dan Robinson does, where he will leave on wire to just let it swell up and grow over, and that gives even a bulkier base.
I don't think he's done that on purpose. Maybe
Okay.
sometimes.
I know people do that.
Yeah.
Overall, right now, I'd say it might be best to possibly put it in the ground and into a grow bag and let it just kind of do its thing, also while maintaining proper care technique and putting some wire on to get some shape. Because if you leave it in a pot, it's going to take that much longer to really get it thicker. If you don't have the space to put it in the ground. I was going to say. Yeah. Go, yeah, Angelica, please.
Yeah. No, sorry, not to interrupt you. Yeah,
no.
That's what I was going to say. I think something I've learned a lot, although I have very little experience with this particular species, one thing that translates to all bonsais is that I learned for myself specifically is that I will, along with a lot of people, be a little bit too much in a hurry to make something a bonsai when really what it needs is you to care for it and let it take its time to grow. It needs time to grow. Put it in the ground and then open up your possibilities. So always don't try to narrow the style right now. There's still a lot of growing to do. So the idea is, instead of trying to figure out a style, try to figure out, okay, how can I maximize my options in the future? So whether it be, making a twist out of the trunk, or just letting it grow freely, giving yourself those options. So in the future, you can decide between, okay, maybe this is looking better now as a literati, or maybe this is better as a shohin, but not limiting yourself to trying to make something out of it too quickly, and letting it just naturally develop and grow, and focus more on the health of it really than anything. And the tree will start to tell you with time what it will, what it would more naturally go towards.
Yeah.
And I do like that idea of kind of doing both strategies at once. One thing that Drew could do is he could do a little bit of branch selection at the bottom, because he had multiple branches there, and then some branch selection at the top. So that way these areas are less congested, and he can start to almost design the bottom as though it will be a shohin, and then design the top as though that's the future design. And then as you progress, maybe you'll be like, oh, this side actually looks better than the other. So maybe you'll decide later on.
We could even air layer it if it gets big enough,
Could try that. Yeah. Pine air layering, I've read, is tricky. I'm going to try one this year, but we'll see.
Angelica, what were you saying? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, yeah, it's okay. And things are always changing. So, by just seeing the history of trees, when you go back and you look at, the pictures of what trees used to look like, you start realizing, oh my God, this tree used to be upright. And then now when you look at it, it's a cascade, so trees are always changing throughout time. So you lose a branch here and there, it's natural. It happens, right? Mistakes are made, or just naturally the tree decides to throw a fit, right?
Right.
And it changes style completely. So, you kind of, like I was saying before, just don't try to force it.
To the point too, where Ryan was talking about possibly doing some branch selection, it will decrease the whirl effect of the swelling at one joint or conjunction, and also will help free up some energy to utilize in other areas. To the selection of that's on you, to what you feel. But as Angelica said too, and Ryan, we've all kind of come to agreement. I would say let it guide you in the process of letting it become itself, Angelica said it best.
Thank you. I tried to include something.
No.
Mission accomplished. Okay, Kevin, would you take the next tree, please?
Yeah, so this is from Eduardo from Facebook. Eduardo, thank you for submitting, and appreciate everything. If you're listening, thank you. Looks like we have another black pine, or is that a mugo?
I was guessing black pine. It has very long needles for a mugo.
It does. No, it's not a Scots. Okay, so I'm assuming it's black pine. It looks like black pine bark. Looks like we have a traditionally styled with the apex definitely over center. If we look at the other ones, these two different trees are the same tree.
No, it's the same tree.
Okay.
One interesting question. I'm not sure if Eduardo has picked a front, but between these two pictures, maybe we could pick a front or like say the good qualities about each.
I will say for the branching, it's very traditional in the sense of having that kind of structured, layered approach of same leveling of branching. From my experience of where I've seen in Japan to people's nurseries here, DC has a few in the National Arboretum that way as well, if I'm correct. Yes, is that right, Angelica, from what I remember?
Pretty sure.
Okay. So many trees.
I started just a few weeks ago, so I'm still not familiar with all the trees yet.
Oh, for sure.
I'm getting to know them.
In good time.
Yeah.
The weight this tree carries from the foliage to the girth and kind of size of the base is a little too top heavy, I think. Pot wise, it fits, but for what it's showing, it's carrying from the size, it looks like it probably be the size of my thumb, possibly. You may want to bring it in a little more.
Like a shallower pot.
Well, I'm talking about the whole canopy.
I see.
It's a little too heavy for what the size and girth of the trunk is. If I were to see that in nature, I would think that it might just topple over because it's too top heavy. Within that as well, I see the girth and size of the trunk maybe promoting more of a Shohin sized, maybe a little bigger, just with that trunk movement that we see in the other photo. If we're choosing a front, I would say go for the second photo where looks like it's on the other side because it definitely has more movement.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that pulls my eye away is some of the radial roots coming out. Maybe you could try to gin some of those and add some deadwood features there. I know that can be done. Yeah, what are your all's thoughts on these selections here?
So for me, one thing that kind of strikes me looking at it is that I don't really see any negative space. Right. So that's something that I've started to learn that's very important is not just, working on those pads and developing and ramifying and doing all that, but also where can you create that negative space that really enhances the overall flow and look of the tree. When you don't have negative space, the eye doesn't know where to travel and it becomes a little bit messy. So I would say one thing you could start looking at over time, again, for me, I spend a lot of time looking at my trees. There's no shame in that, right? You turn them one way, you look at them. I'll have my breakfast and I'll be looking at my tree and I'll be like, and spin it, look at it again. And like I have it and so I can see it from a window, the one that I'm contemplating doing some major, like taking out a branch that will give some nice negative space, because that confidence, it's hard to figure out which one is going to do it, So yeah, just kind of take that time, look at it, figure out your front, like they're saying, and then at the same time, see where you can create that negative space that will have a little bit more flow to the tree, a little bit more visually appealing in that way. So it's not so busy at the overall at the top.
Yeah, so kind of going off what Angelica's saying, on the second picture, if that is the front, which is the front that Kevin suggested, there is this little tiny window where you can see the trunk. And I would suggest expanding that a little bit. I do like to see into the foliage just as much as I like to see the ramified foliage, So I think there's a balance to strike there. And one thing about the needle size for this, so if it is a Japanese black pine and you're doing the decandling to promote ramification and short needles, if you do the decandling a couple weeks later, like as the candle expands and the needles on the candle starts to elongate, it's sinking more energy into that candle. So the later you do that, the more energy that it's spending before it makes the new buds. And then if you do that at the later time, you'll get even shorter needles on the new flesh. So I haven't done a lot of decandling here in Ohio, but when I was in Seattle, that would be like a late decandle would be like the end of June. So maybe in Ohio it would be like mid-June because our seasons are a little shorter. I'm not sure. The one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to do it too late for your growing season because then you may not get the second flush, like if you start to get into late summer. But you can experiment with that. And I think that should give Eduardo some things to think about.
Well, one more thing too. Don't be afraid. I know I still struggle with this to see through it, as what you've all said, to come full circle. Play with some angles, tilt it up, put it on the side. Well, not fully on the side, but at an angle for each 360 view. That can give a whole different perspective of what you're actually trying to, make shown in your artistic outlet here. But thank you. And then
the last tree, actually, Angelica, this is a tree that I dug up maybe a month ago. So I'll give you the primer on it. So we found this tree in a huge neighborhood lot that the city had purchased because all of these homes, the old landlord wasn't maintaining them. And I heard that there was like some gang issues there. Like Rob told me that we had to be careful about going there and digging because he thought we were going to find some used needles in the dirt or something. Luckily,
get shot or get shot.
We didn't find anything. Yeah. No difficulties like that. But a club member, we had heard that this area was all going to be demolished so the city could build like a new business park. And a club member had the smarts to know who in the city to ask for permission to dig things there. So we rescued a bunch of plants there. And I went there one day, and this one was just kind of sitting there in this open area after all the houses around it had been knocked down. And so this is one of the native grapes in Ohio. I haven't seen the leaf, so it's either the gray bark grape or the frost grape. And when I found it, it was sticking out at that 45-degree angle. And it's got like this pocket of deadwood, hollow almost, where the branches bend back over that 45-degree bend. And if you go to the very bottom picture, you can see I planted it into the biggest training pot I had available, and just to make all the roots fit, basically. And so now it's standing upright, like perpendicular from the ground. And those branches are kind of coming out at a 90-degree angle relative to the ground. So I was wondering what planting angle I might use in the future.
Okay, yeah, that's really cool though, first of all.
I'm hoping it lives. I'm starting to see some buds, so it's going well so far.
Yeah, obviously you have to wait to see how it does, if it recovers, if it gets healthy, and it'll start to bud, right? Where is it going to bud? Where is it going to start throwing branches from? That's really important, right, for figuring out what angle you're going to work with later. But I do really like in that first photo, that very slanted look to the side, and then it comes back, and then it has a little bit like, that curvature. It's a little bit more of a flow there. I do feel like if you keep it upright, it's going to be a little bit too striking. Again, it depends on what develops in the future. So unless you get, budding and branching out on all sides here, that you can really work with it. If you only get, let's say you only get buds at the very tip of that, at the top, then I would say you could do something dramatic looking, right? Keep it really slanted and do maybe like some sort of windswept look or wind influence, or, I now that I've been doing these internships, I've seen some really interesting ideas. Like just, here at the museum, we have a bonsai that's styled after a dragon. It's a maple. It's styled out. It has a tail and everything. And then during the fall months, when it turns color and it turns red, it's like a red. It literally looks like a red dragon. So that's you can. It doesn't have to be something that's super strict to the styling of what we would perceive normal strict bonsai, traditional bonsai. It can be something different. So I like that. I like the idea of kind of doing something a little bit more dramatic in that way. But I definitely would say you need to wait to see if it even survives, and then see what comes out of it, what buds you get, where you get them.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. So I'm not doing anything with it the first year, but in the long term, I'm just thinking while I have it,
Yeah.
Kevin, do you have any opinions on this?
Let me see. I do agree with Angelica's first photo appreciation. It definitely gives a lot. It almost makes me think of a really, Pumbaa from the Lion King. Kind of looks like a warthog's snout with some ears, and then a really long jaw, like a comical, animated series or something. But in regards to that, outside of that, my imagination's running wild. Too much energy drink. Yerba mate for the win. I would like to see that trunk. It's almost too parallel. It's like almost too this side profile. I want to see maybe a little bit of a rotation and see what it gives, and maybe a little bit of a. So if we're looking at a clock, we'll say it's noon. I want to see maybe what a 2 o'clock would look like on that. If we're looking at here with the top, not
Oh, you mean
knob.
like on that last picture?
Yeah, but more so with the front you have here, having it rotate a bit and then kind of curl in just a tiny bit to see if there's more of a twist, because it looks like there's a twist starting near the base, and it wants to kind of go maybe like that and around. I think if you can accentuate that a little more, you can have even more just availability of movement, and then consider the branching from there. Also, you have to consider what's gonna what's gonna give you what when it gives you,
Yeah, yeah. This
being
one's
a grape, who knows.
yeah. The one thing about this is I don't even know what the foliage is gonna look like, because this is normally a vining species. So I haven't like imagined in my head how to make a nice canopy out of it. The fact that it's standing up right now was a practical consideration to get all the roots in the pot. But one thing I could imagine is like if I keep it in that angle, I could let the vines like cascade down, almost like a veil or something like that. And so if I were to reposition it to be an actual cascade, that may also be an option. But I don't know that one, like it would look cool, but I don't know that it really fits like naturalistically.
I mean, if you were to do this traditionally, you could just do it as like a slant style in a nice rectangle-ish pot, maybe with some inverted walls, a nice little flare to add to the flare that you get on the top. But also considering too, there is some awesome deadwood that you could accentuate more as well.
And you could also put it maybe not even in a pot. You could do like some sort of rock. You put it on so it's almost like it's hanging off the side of a cliff. That it just happens, because that's the thing. It does look a little bit extreme to me, all that curvature and everything.
Yeah.
So to get it to kind of fit more with the image you're trying to create, instead of trying, like, again, going back to maybe try looking at something that's not as traditional, and see maybe something hanging off a cliff, and then it does cascade down, and it has that feeling almost like a curtain coming down if it comes out of the cracks of the cliff. So you could do it on like a rock or something.
Definitely.
I like
And
that
also,
idea.
And also too, is consideration of planting where it's at now. You can make a prop for it to grow in that way where you want it to, and just train it in that way.
You mean like angle the pot?
Yeah, and you have like you build a prop, almost like a shelf at an angle, and then keep it enclosed that way. Put some something chicken wire or something on top so you don't lose soil. But training it that way, and the roots will go with gravity and where the heat is, and so where the water conducts in that pot, you're going to have more heat where the water is sitting. So something that way too, if you want to have it a little more fast or in process to possibly an angle you're considering tilting it and keeping it that way and on the ground.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe we'll come back to this in the future, and I'll share the progress here.
Definitely.
Yeah, let me know how it does, how it grows.
So that's all the listener questions we have for today. And if anybody in the future is listening to this or watching the YouTube video and wants to submit questions or trees for this brainstorming type session, you can find the link to the form on bonsai-time-podcast.com, or you can just email us bonsai-time-podcast@gmail.com. So Angelica, oh,
Ryan, you want to say?
Yeah, I just want to say we wanted to thank you for spending so much time with us. It's been great getting to know your story. And personally, I just hearing about all your experience in learning so many different things at a high level and in teaching your music and all these things. I'm excited to see, how your career teaching bonsai ends up and where you go with that.
Thank you.
Can only go up from here. Where can people find you? This is a part where you sell yourself even bigger.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I end up talking about it and I never share where it is. Totally fine. So the first of all, the database is called Discover Potters. You can find it on my website, arbonsaiart.com. And you can find me on my website. You can also find, the links to my social media. I have Facebook and Instagram. So you can friend me there as well. And, there's also an email. So if you have any potters that you want to add, or you just want to chat and talk to me and whatnot, I'm always looking for new friends. So
we want to help.
You can send me an email as well.
Awesome. Again, thank you for your time. I know you got to wake up early tomorrow for your apprenticeship, but we really appreciate it, and thank you for working with our schedule too.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun and honestly an honor. I get really nervous before these things, and it's not every day someone asks you to do an interview, so I really appreciate it, and it's an honor for me. Thank you.
Get used to it. You're gonna have more. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you
get
so much.
Some sleep. Tell Andy. Real quick, are you gonna be at Nationals or are you gonna be behind at the Arboretum when Andy and Michael are there?
I am going to be there, but probably on Sunday because I work Saturday.
Okay, well, I'll be there.
Yeah. I'm going to be there no matter what. I'm making that happen, okay? I missed the last one, and I've been so bummed out since. So I'm going to make it my business to go to the next one, even if it's only for a day.
This one should be better because there's not a population limit as far as people, because it's not post-COVID. It's like post-COVID.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Did you already buy your ticket?
No.
Buy your ticket soon.
Okay, I'm gonna buy my ticket. Okay.
Don't wait. They go fast.
I know Michael's going and Andy is going, and then I'm gonna be staying behind to care for the trees at the museum. So, but then Sunday I'm off, so I'll be there.
Cool. Yeah, I'll be there. I'll do there. So I'll finally meet you in person.
Awesome. That'd be great.
Awesome. Tell Andy we said hi. Show him some love from us too, and thanks again.
No, thank you so much, and I'll let him know. Awesome.
For sure. Take it easy.
Bye. Have a good night.
Bye. To find more information on the podcast, please check out our Instagram page, Bonsai Time Podcast, and our website, bonsai-time-podcast.com. To stay in touch with us, Kevin's Instagram is Kevin_Ferris, PNW, and Ryan's website is right2tree2.com. You can find these links in the description below. Thank you for listening, and bonsai on.